wrong way to start. I was going to say festival legend. That's not.
Oh God, that makes me sound about 100.
That's not the way to start. You've been coming to the festival for many, many years, Malcolm. I think I first met you here in 2014 when I started, but your association goes way back to the early 90s. When was the first time you became aware of the festival, or when did you first come as an audience member?
Well, I was brought up in Edinburgh, so it was always part of my life in the summer. And the first time I really had a lot to do with the festival was being a programme seller in the upper tier at the Usher Hall. From when I was about 12, I think. A lot of people from my school, George Watson's, started selling programmes. So I heard all the amazing performances, all the Giulini oratorios, Verdi Requiem with massive soloists like Margaret Price and Jesse Norman and Pavarotti, yes, before he was actually that famous. So that was a great experience. I mean, every night in the Usher Hall hearing all these amazing things. The first time I ever heard Winterreise was in the Usher Hall when I was 14, Barenboim and Fischer-Dieskau. And I heard that and thinking, I'd quite like to do that.
So was that a moment where you thought that being an accompanist or a collaborative pianist was what you wanted to do, or can you trace it before that?
I think because my mum was a collaborative pianist, a chamber musician, she didn't play for singers, but she had a duo with my aunt, Joan Dixon, Hester and Joan Dixon. I saw right from the word go, right from when I was born really, that collaborative music was fun. And that these two actually completely different personalities could actually make music well together, that they understood each other. So I think I was aware of it, with maybe even subconsciously, that's what I was built to do. Really.
And you're from a musical family. Obviously, you talked about your mum. Was there ever any sense that you wouldn't go in, that music wouldn't be your career path?
I never made a conscious decision that it would be. And at school I did many other things as well. I wasn't really a sportsman, but I was very, very interested in languages and the theatre as well. I mean, I acted quite a bit at school too. So it kind of just happened. I don't think I ever made a decision, but there was not really any other choice. I think that was what I was designed to do.
And languages is such a key part of being the musician you are, isn't it? Because you have to work across so many different languages, different dialects, different styles. And it's something I wish I'd done more of at school.
Yeah, it's a very important thing for all musicians. To be able to understand, if you're playing songs, exactly how the language works. Not just what every word means, but how the language actually works, how the grammar works, how the shape of the sentences work. But also, when you rehearse abroad, like last week I was rehearsing with Sabine Meyer, clarinetist, who doesn't work in anything other than German, so you have to be able to rehearse in German and be fluent enough that you can actually express exactly what you want in other languages. So very important.
Yeah. So from your 14-year-old self, tell us, being at George Watson's, and I presume you were maybe in the same year as Donald Runnicles, or around the same time?
A little bit younger than Donald. Just a little. Well, I actually played the cello, and I was in the orchestra that Donald founded when he was probably about 14 or 15, called Caritas, that was based around students from the merchant company schools, Daniel Stewart and Watson's, and many, many others as well. So that was great to be able to play an orchestral instrument as well, to be able to understand that sort of collaboration within an orchestra. So that was part of my life, and I was in the Edinburgh Youth Orchestra as well. So that was fun. And at school we had a slightly crazy, slightly quirky music master called Patrick Criswell, and also Richard Telfer, who was one of the founders of Scottish Opera. And actually, he gave me his tickets for every Friday to go and hear the Scottish National Orchestra, as it was then, in the Usher Hall. So again, I had a massive opportunity to go and hear all these things. I heard Rubinstein play when he was 80-something, playing two concertos in one evening. I had Gina Bachau, I heard all these wonderful things, but I heard all that repertoire as well. So amazingly broad base.
Yeah. And then from Edinburgh, it's Cambridge, isn't it?
I went to St Catherine's College, Cambridge, as a choral scholar, because I've always actually loved singing myself. I'm yet another second-rate baritone. So I was never going to be a singer. But I think it's also very important that if you are a song pianist, like I am most of the time these days, that you understand what it feels like to sing. I quite often send my students to have not many singing lessons, but a few, so they understand about the support and about the breathing and about something about the placement of the voice, so you can physically sympathize with a singer rather than just being aware of it. I think that's very important. So yes, I had 3 wonderful years at Cambridge, as I say, as a chorus scholar, but also Cambridge in those days, and probably it's still the same now, gives you so many performance opportunities. I mean, I was doing almost a concert every night. So it get you used to being in front of an audience and gets you through a massive amount of repertoire. I practiced a lot, so I mean, I was always on top of what I was playing. But then I went on to the Royal College for 2 years postgrad after that. So for me, that was a perfect balance of education. Everybody's different, but for me, that was actually the perfect balance.
And when you went to the Royal College, was that to begin to specialise in song, being a song pianist, or were you still a very broad-based, did you still have a very broad-based repertoire and focus?
Yes, I did quite a lot of solo playing in those days as well. In fact, in the gap year that I had between finishing school and going to Cambridge, I was in the first BBC Young Musician of the Year, and I got the final of that. So I had quite a few solo concerts as a result of that. And by doing that and enjoying it, I decided that that was not me, that I was much more a collaborative musician than a solo musician. I mean, being a solo pianist is a very lonely life. Yeah. And I like people. And I like collaborating with people. And so that was a good thing to do in order that I could decide to do something else. But it was also very good technically, that I had that technical background, so that I could play. I played many concertos and solo pieces, and so I had that facility, which is good. Because people always think that being an accompanist, you need lesser technique. Completely wrong.
Yes. Yes. Some of the really virtuoso pieces that must come on your desk for song. Mm-hmm. I think you're entirely right. That probably is a perception.
And it's a different art. Of course, it's a different art, but you do need a massive amount of control and control of colours as well. Being a song pianist.
And it's not just playing quietly, is it?
No, it's making different colours when you play quietly and when you play loudly, and playing a colour that's suitable for whatever the singer is saying.
And one of the casualties of 2020 was a programme we put together to show you as a collaborative pianist, but with instruments. Mm-hmm. Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven. Yeah. You must. Is it something you miss and would like to do more, or do you feel happy and comfortable with song, or is there a bit of you that yearns to do different things?
Yes, I mean, I can't complain about my life because I play for all these amazing singers and this amazing repertoire. But I did do a lot of instrumental playing when I first started. I had a piano trio for 7 years, which is amazing repertoire. I played a lot for clarinets, for violins. I do miss the Brahms sonatas. I do miss the Beethoven trios. And it's a different feeling because they're all much bigger structures. A song is a perfect miniature, usually, unless you're playing a huge Schubert thing that lasts for 25 minutes. But usually it's a perfect miniature. And having to play a Brahms sonata gives you a different feeling of the geography of music. So I'm very grateful that I did that, but I would love to do that again.
Thinking about you and the festival, you've spoken about how your exposure as a teenager in the Usher Hall. Your first appearance at the Edinburgh International Festival was 1992. Mm-hmm. Do you remember anything about what that was?
I think that was a Scottish programme with Pat McMahon, I think, and was it Pat McMahon and Mary McLaughlin? Mary McLaughlin. And we did all these songs by Mackenzie and McCunn and any other Mucks that we had here. And it was a really interesting programme, a bit like the one we're doing this year, which a lot of things we discovered for the first time by doing a particular theme. Mm-hmm.
So that was 1992, and I've had a look at the festival archive because we can search by your name. Okay. And I can't remember just how many performances, but there must be 30 or 40 different performances over the years. And after 1992, the next time we saw you was with the Mark Morris Dance Company. But what I find fascinating is looking to see all of the names that appear on the report. Some very, very recognisable names, and some names which are very recognisable now, but maybe weren't when they first appeared. So the first major recital after the 1992 was in 1996 with Bryn Terfel, and you've appeared with him on a number of occasions. Also, Carita Matala, Simon Keenly side. What for you is so special about working with those singers?
Every singer I play for is different, which is great, and I love that variety in my life, and the way that, like having lots of different friends, every singer I play for brings out a different aspect of my personality. You hopefully keep your own integrity and you keep your own personality, but they emphasize certain things. And playing for Bryn, being the big personality he is and the big voice that he is, also enables you to do something different at the piano. And I played for Bryn since he was a student at Guildhall. His teacher, Rudolf Piane, rang me and said, I think there's somebody slightly special that you might quite like to play for. So I played for Bryn in his final recital at Guildhall doing Schwanexang. And and people like Carita, the big personalities as well. The difference of them all is amazing. And you put Bryn and you put Carita in the Usher Hall because they are that sort of personality. But not all singers would suit that space.
And when you're with a singer a big singer like Bryn or Carita, how do you deal with making sure that your integrity comes across? Is there back and forward? Is there friction? How does it work coming to the final concert?
No friction, and particularly with Bryn. I mean, we've been working together for so long that we really understand each other, and he's so flexible. I mean, he, I think, has actually revolutionized the way people sing songs, because he sings much more like he's talking to you, like he's telling you a story down the pub, than sort of being on a pedestal and being this sort of, icon, even though he is an icon. Yeah. So he's an incredibly generous colleague in that way. I mean, he responds to anything I do, and we rehearse, of course we rehearse, but then, like all my colleagues, you leave the doors open for stuff to happen in the performance. And somebody like Florian Busch says to me, I don't know why we ever rehearse, because we do completely different things in the concert. But that's what it's about, It's always good that there's always new things to discover in pieces that I've played a million times. I must have played Dich die Liebe many, many, many times, but I don't really know how it's going to work until I sit down to play it. I don't even know with something like Dich die Liebe how I'm going to play the first bar until I actually sit down at the piano. Yeah. I'm not a sort of an organizer about what I do. Otherwise I just think it's boring if it's identical every time.
When you're putting together a programme for a Queen's Hall recital, I guess often it's repertoire of particular singers singing at that time. But how do you go about constructing a programme for one of the morning concerts?
It's important to pace it for the singer, because in usual years it's an 11 o'clock in the morning recital. So the singer, it's hard for a singer to sing at 11 o'clock in the morning. So you have to also pace it for them, you have to pace it for the audience. I don't think I do a different programme for those recitals as I would do in the evening, but I do think a leader programme, a song programme is like a good menu always, that you have a starter, a fish course, a meat course and a pudding. So you do have variety and you work your way through to the most substantial thing, which is kind of probably 2/3 of the way through. Yeah. And I think that's better for the audience as well. Yeah.
It's a bit like curating the programme for the whole festival, of thinking of that journey through the programme, but also being able to think about light and shade, so that it's great to have a whole cycle or a whole look at a certain bit of repertoire, but you do, over the course of 3 weeks, need the balance, and I guess that's the same.
Yeah, and it depends if you're going to do a one composer concert. certain composers work and certain composers don't. I mean, Schubert always works because, I mean, there's a variety, so much variety. I remember talking to Fischer Dieskau because he did all these single composer concerts, and he said there were quite a few composers that he did once and then never again. He said they were great composers, people like Beethoven and even Strauss. A whole evening is just not suitable. They are wonderful in their own right, but in the context of other composers, which of course that's the way song evenings have always been.
And is there something you've done programmatically once that you would love to do again and you've never found the opportunity to? Do you ever think about that's something to do again?
I don't think I've ever done something like that I haven't done again, to be honest. I've devised quite a few programs for Susan Graham over the years, and one we've just done recently, which works amazingly, is she'd never sung Schumann Frauenlied-Leben, so she wanted to do it, but not in the normal way. So we started with a Schumann in each group, and then we did 3 songs by other composers in other languages about the same thing. And sometimes these sort of programs are a nice idea, and when you end up doing them, you think, that's a bit academic, it was a nice idea, but it doesn't actually work. But this one works amazingly. And also because Susie's such an amazing singer and communicator. That's so important. But sometimes what looks good on paper doesn't work, and sometimes things that you're worried about that might not work suddenly take off.
So Malcolm, tell us about the Walter Scott programme that you've put together for us this year, which celebrates his 250th anniversary of his birth.
When I looked, and actually there are very few songs. So I actually had to really investigate some stuff, but actually we found some really good things. There's a ballad by Joachim Raff, who was around at the same time as Beethoven, which is a really good piece. And if there'd been too many famous songs, I would not have had to investigate the other ones. There's one song by Meyerbeer, there's one by Glinka, there's one by Hubert Parry. I mean, the meat in the sandwich, the meat in the menu, this time is Schubert, of course. I mean, there are 5 songs from The Lady of the Lake, which everybody knows the Ave Maria, but they may not know the other ones. So it was actually all centered around that. And usually that's what happens with a program. You find the meat in the sandwich and then you make everything work around it. And that's what happened with this. And I recorded for Deutsche Grammophon, I don't know how many years ago now, the complete Beethoven folk songs. And I remembered very clearly from them the Walter Scott ones, which are some of the highlights of that 9 CD box that we made. So that's that. And it's lovely to work with Ursula Smith, who was the cellist on all those recordings as well.
And I was reading an article that Barry Cooper wrote about the Beethoven folk song arrangements, where Beethoven, if you read his letters, appears quite mercenary in his negotiations about fees for the folk songs. Yeah. And Barry talks about these as serious compositions. Beethoven refers to them as compositions rather than settings. What do you think of them? Are they fun to play, and how serious are they?
The good ones are very good, but there are so many. As I say, there's 9 CDs worth of them, so they're not all good. And some of them he obviously did do to pay his rent, or whatever he had to. But the good ones, which are all in this program, are amazingly good word painting of English, and it's actually not very common English either. And then he always has fun with the play out at the end, which is just the piano trio. I mean, sometimes there's a whole page that you think he's just suddenly writing a piano trio at the end of this, but it's always in the mood of the songs, and I think they're good, and they're really worth hearing because people don't do them.
And for Beethoven, who, unlike Haydn, never came to the UK. I mean, Haydn didn't come to Scotland, but came to London. How idiomatic and stylistically appropriate are they for a Scottish folk song?
They're not folk songs, really. I mean, particularly the poems of Walter Scott actually suit both those composers better than some of the more folk songs. So they are in between, which I think is actually the best balance of all of them.
Yeah, and there, of course, there are connections in Edinburgh with these because some of the settings were published here in Edinburgh by George Thomson.
Yes.
Some were published in London.
Yes.
And I was reading that of all of the Beethoven songs in English, the Scottish ones were the first to be seriously catalogued.
Yes, absolutely. And of course we have all these places that people will know when they hear. You have Melrose and you have Ettrick and you have the Tweed. So it really is. It's very much of this area, the borders particularly.
Yeah, and the violin and the cello parts in the Beethoven are proper parts. They're not just doubling the piano, are they?
Not at all. And sometimes they double the voice and sometimes they don't, or sometimes they double the voice but with a different articulation than what the singer is doing. So it really adds a different texture. It's very clever.
And there are two early songs by Mendelssohn.
Yes.
Which when you suggested them, I have to confess, were new to me. Tell us a little bit about.
Well, written in 1820 when he was incredibly young, and written therefore 7 or 8 years before the Schubert famous settings. They're beautiful. They're very sparse, and some of them have little melismas in it. Particularly in the Ave Maria, thought he was writing a sort of religious song. So it's got these long melismas. But they're very interesting, and you can really hear what was to come, as in all the great composers when they write when they're so young. You don't hear the fully formed composer, but they're very interesting.
Yeah, and then as you said, the big the meat being the Schubert.
Yeah.
So songs for both Liz and for Roddy.
Yes. I mean, the Liz sings the main character, the Lady of the Lake herself, Ellen's songs, 3 songs. And Roddy sings 2 with 2 different characters. One is Norman, who has to leave his wife as they just got married, and he's called off to war, literally as they walk out the church. So he has to say, bye. Yes, I hope I'll be back. We actually never find out in The Lady of the Lake whether he actually does come back or not. Ellen is part of a family who is against the king. And the king, as they used to do in those days, roams round in disguise to try and get to know his population. And she has the king in her hut, and she knows it's the king. So she's got to distract him from the fact that maybe her father might appear, who's his arch rival. So the first 2 songs are that. The Ave Maria is just basically God help us in these situations. The other song that Roddy sings is the hero imprisoned in the tower, saying that he would love to be with his beloved Ellen, but she's actually listening, which is a lovely situation too. And
there are 2 songs that we don't hear from Lady of the Lake. Tell us why.
Well, they're choral songs. Yeah, they're 4-part songs, both of those. Yeah, very interesting though.
And do you feel the absence of them, or
not really, because they're 2 choral numbers that actually don't have very much to do with the plot. They're scene settings, so actually we don't miss them. They're actually good music, but actually we've got the ones we have are plot songs, which is good.
And it's interesting hearing you talk about the plot of that, because I think we all think of Schubert as a composer mainly of songs and sort of great chamber music and symphonies, but he's also an operatic composer.
He wrote operas, certainly. Yeah. He just, for me, apart from Fierabras, which is his last one, which has actually great drama in it, he just didn't have a dramatic sense in a big. He did in the symphonies. I mean, the C major symphonies are fantastic. Yeah. It has fantastic geography, but he just didn't have the knack for operas. But he had the fantastic knack for drama, as you see in all his songs. But he was also obsessed with Italian opera. He went to the opera a lot. He loved all that style, and he did write some songs in Italian in the sort of Bellini, Rossini, Donizetti style. Yeah. So yeah, he was obsessed with the voice as well, which, as you can see, with the way he writes in his lead.
Yeah, I think Fierabras is one of the pieces on my list of would love to include, but it's one of these pieces I think that needs a conductor with a vision of the piece, and also probably some judicious cuts.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of melodrama in it that would have been fine at the time because that's what people were used to. Yeah. But these days, it doesn't work. But it was one of Niklaus Haneko's favourite operas. He really championed it all his life.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm very fond of the Claudio Abbado recording.
Yeah, yeah.
With some great singers.
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah.
So music that's ripe for another look, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think Schubert, like Haydn, wrote some wonderful music but didn't have that dramatic, and maybe Fauré as well. For his one opera, Pélélope, is beautiful music, but it just doesn't have that dramatic pace.
Yeah, and as you say, Haydn's another case in point for that. The operas which can be quite testing of maybe of patience and concentration.
Yeah, I mean, the music is always glorious, but it just doesn't have the drama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you get something like the creation where the whole world unfolds in front of you.
Completely. That is an opera, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Malcolm, for spending time chatting to us today about your career and your history with the festival. And we're really looking forward to the Walter Scott programme.